She stepped onto the yacht, heels clicking against polished teak, and felt every eye turn. But not the admiring kind. At least, not yet. Her sister's mouth hung open, the same sister who had once barred her from family gatherings, now frozen, in disbelief. Her family had laughed at her dreams, dismissed her ambitions, whispered that she'd never amount to anything. And now, here she was, the center of attention, radiating a confidence they hadn't earned the right to witness. Don't get it twisted. This wasn't vanity. This was a moment years in the making, a quiet victory over every no she'd ever been told. Every insult, every overlooked opportunity, every whispered mockery had led to this moment on the deck of a yacht that sparkled under the sun, with the skyline reflecting her triumph. But let's rewind. Her name is Layla Morgan. Once, she was the girl nobody noticed, always the shadow to her sister's spotlight. Birthdays celebrated for everyone else, achievements minimized, dreams quietly sabotaged, invitations to family parties, never. Compliments from relatives, rare. Her sister thrived on attention, charm, and being the golden child. Layla thrived in silence, absorbing lessons nobody thought she needed. School halls were battlegrounds of subtle cruelty. Friends and cousins noticing her only when she stumbled, teachers nodding politely at her work, but never praising it. She learned early how to keep her head down while building her dreams quietly, stacking small victories like bricks in a fortress nobody would see until it was ready. Even outside the home, life was no easier. Jobs came and went, paychecks barely, covered bills, and every attempt to be noticed or rewarded for her talent was met with indifference or envy. Yet something inside refused to break. She learned resilience not because she wanted to, but because survival demanded it. So how did a girl who once spent evenings wondering if anyone would ever see her succeed end up on a yacht, leaving her family speechless? How did Layla transform humiliation into awe, laughter into admiration, and rejection into undeniable power? That, story lovers, is what we're about to uncover. The journey isn't about the yacht. It's about the girl who refused to be invisible, the mistakes she endured, the lessons she learned, and the audacity it took to claim her moment. Welcome, story lovers. From where are you watching? Drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story has traveled. Layla Morgan wasn't always the woman commanding attention on a yacht. Once, she was the quiet girl in a bustling household where laughter always seemed to favor her sister. Birthdays were a spectacle for the golden child, while Layla's were barely noticed. Compliments were reserved for her sister's accomplishments. Layla's small victories were often overlooked or quietly dismissed. She grew up learning that visibility was a privilege she didn't have, and recognition was something you earned silently, often alone. School offered no escape. Layla had dreams that stretched far beyond the modest streets of her hometown. She wanted to be an architect, to design buildings that touched the sky, to leave a mark on the world. She studied relentlessly, staying up late with textbooks under the dim glow of a desk lamp. Teachers recognized her talent, but praise was never loud enough to drown out the background of family indifference. Every A she earned, every award was quietly celebrated by herself because the world around her rarely noticed. Life, as if conspiring against her, threw obstacles in almost every direction. Financial struggles were constant. Her parents worked tirelessly but never had enough, and Layla quickly learned the value of money at a young age. At 15, she took on part-time jobs, babysitting, tutoring younger students, delivering groceries. Each paycheck was a small victory, a step toward independence, but also a reminder that dreams were luxuries her reality could rarely afford. Then came the moments that tested her spirit. A betrayal she didn't see coming shook her world. A childhood friend, whom she trusted deeply, leaked her academic work, claiming it as their own. Her first major scholarship opportunity slipped away because of this, leaving her devastated. Around the same time, a sudden illness in her family drained what little savings they had, forcing her to take on even more responsibility. Bills piled up. Nights grew longer. Her own dreams were put on hold, buried under duty and necessity. Yet it was the quiet acts of survival that defined her. Layla learned to make a dollar stretch. She mapped out budgets meticulously, skipped meals when necessary, and took every odd job she could find. Each morning, she woke before dawn to work, went to school, returned to work, and still found a few stolen hours to study her designs and sketch plans. Sacrifice became her constant companion, resilience her silent mentor. Even in hardship, she nurtured her ambitions in hidden corners. Late at night, after the world had gone to sleep, she would pore over architecture books, draft blueprints on scraps of paper, and imagine buildings that defied gravity. She refused to let her spirit be crushed by circumstance. The world may not have been paying attention, but she was paying attention to herself. Layla's life was marked by contradictions: humility in public, ambition in private, invisibility at home, tenacity in the outside world, exhaustion in body, vigilance in mind. She learned the art of quietly enduring setbacks, of transforming frustration into determination, of letting small, steady progress accumulate until it became undeniable. By the time she left her hometown, she was no longer just a girl overlooked. She was someone who had practiced resilience daily, who had learned to thrive in silence, and who had honed the patience necessary to survive, and eventually to rise. Each hardship had sharpened her, each sacrifice had strengthened her, and each disappointment had fueled a quiet fire of ambition that refused to die. Every small victory, every hidden effort, became a brick in the foundation of a life that the world and her family would soon be forced to acknowledge. Layla's story wasn't just about the hardships she endured. It was about the grit, ingenuity, and unwavering spirit that transformed struggle into strategy and pain into eventual triumph. Layla never expected a single conversation to change the trajectory of her life. She had spent years moving quietly, surviving on the edges of opportunity, never demanding attention but always alert, always learning. And yet sometimes, fate intervenes in ways you don't see coming. It happened at an industry seminar in New York, a conference she had managed to attend through a small scholarship. She felt out of place at first. The room was filled with polished professionals, suits, confident smiles, LinkedIn-worthy interactions, and she, with her modest attire and quiet demeanor, could have easily gone unnoticed. That was until a chance conversation with a mentor figure, an established architect named Marcus Davenport, changed everything. Marcus noticed her sketches, hidden in the corner of her notebook during a lunch break. They weren't just drawings. They were intricate, visionary, and detailed beyond what someone with her limited experience could achieve. "These are remarkable," he said, genuinely impressed. Layla almost laughed, unsure if he was mocking her. But he wasn't. For the first time, someone in the professional world saw her talent not as a hobby, not as a passing interest, but as a rare gift. Opportunities followed quickly, but they were not without obstacles. Colleagues were skeptical, even hostile. One in particular, a rival named Vanessa, seemed determined to undermine Layla at every step. Meetings became arenas for subtle sabotage, projects delayed, emails ignored, credit for work withheld. Every moment of progress felt like walking through a minefield, where one misstep could erase months of effort. Ethical dilemmas appeared next. She discovered financial mismanagement in a small firm where she was contributing freelance work. It was tempting to ignore the problem. After all, it wasn't her responsibility. But silence had never served her before, and her integrity would not allow it. Reporting the discrepancy carried enormous risk. Her reputation, her small income, even her fledgling credibility in the industry could be jeopardized. Yet the thought of letting injustice slide after years of watching others succeed through shortcuts and deceit was unbearable. So she acted. Late nights were spent gathering evidence, running calculations, verifying facts. Each step brought anxiety. Every knock on doors met with suspicion, yet her resolve never wavered. When she finally presented the findings to the firm's leadership, it shook the organization to its core. Some were grateful, some resentful, but all could no longer dismiss her as inexperienced or inconsequential. Simultaneously, her personal life demanded attention. The sister who had barred her from family events now called sporadically, not to reconcile, but to undermine. The contrast between professional recognition and familial belittlement was maddening. Layla had to navigate both, staying focused on her path while ignoring the familiar voices that still tried to define her worth. The stakes escalated further when a high-profile project landed in her lap, a design competition that could determine her career trajectory. The risk was enormous. Deadlines were tight, scrutiny was intense, and the project demanded innovation beyond anything she had attempted publicly. Every mistake could be fatal to her reputation, but Layla thrived under pressure. She poured herself into the work, combining lessons learned from hardship with the creative instincts Marcus had helped refine. Nights blurred into mornings. Her hands stained with pencil marks and coffee, her mind constantly calculating, imagining, revising. Amid this storm of professional trials, Layla began to feel a shift. Small victories, a compliment from a client, acknowledgement from a respected peer, an unsolicited recommendation, began to accumulate. Each one chipped away at the doubt she had carried from childhood. Slowly, invisibility was replaced by presence. Quiet labor transformed into visible results, and then came the moment she realized the scope of her own power. The designs she submitted for the competition were not only accepted, they were celebrated. Industry publications featured her work. Invitations for collaborations, projects, and mentorship arrived in her inbox. For the first time, she felt that her talents could no longer be ignored, not by colleagues, not by clients, not even by the family who had doubted her. But the greatest realization wasn't external recognition. It was the understanding that she could navigate a world stacked against her and emerge intact. She had transformed setbacks into strategy, betrayal into fuel, and challenges into milestones. The girl who once waited for permission to succeed now commanded the room merely by being present, her quiet confidence speaking louder than any words could. This turning point wasn't a single event. It was a cascade of decisions, risks, and relentless determination. Each obstacle she faced, every injustice she confronted, reinforced the knowledge that her destiny wasn't tied to anyone's approval, and her value wasn't conditional on acceptance. By the time the yacht wedding idea emerged, a symbolic culmination of years of perseverance, Layla was no longer the invisible girl who once carried her dreams quietly in the shadows. She had earned the right to be seen, to celebrate, and to claim the power that had been denied to her for decades. The stage was set, stakes were high, and the world, especially her family, would soon witness the transformation they had long ignored. The day of the yacht wedding had arrived, but the true climax wasn't the sun glinting off polished teak or the champagne flowing in crystal flutes. It was the moment her family stepped aboard, the very people who had mocked her, dismissed her, and tried to hold her back. The air was electric with tension, a collision of past resentment and present triumph waiting to unfold. Her sister arrived, first, perfectly dressed, a practiced smile on her face. For years, she had been the golden child, the one whose opinions mattered, the one whose every success was celebrated. And now she stood frozen, the carefully constructed facade cracking. Layla walked past her with quiet confidence, heels tapping lightly against the deck, each step a statement. She didn't need to speak. Her presence alone delivered a message they could no longer ignore. Guests murmured, taking in the details. The elegant arrangements, the sweeping skyline behind them, the sheer audacity of the celebration. But for Layla, the tension wasn't about appearances. It was about recognition, validation for the years of struggle, sacrifice, and quiet endurance. Every insult, every slight, every opportunity they had tried to deny her, this was her reckoning. The pivotal moment came during the toast. Layla raised her glass, her eyes scanning the crowd, finally resting on her family. The silence that followed wasn't forced. It was genuine, almost reverential. Every word she spoke carried the weight of years lived in shadow, the quiet battles no one else had witnessed. She thanked mentors, acknowledged friends, and subtly referenced lessons learned through struggle. Each sentence was deliberate, each pause calculated. Then came the revelation, the subtle, devastating truth they hadn't anticipated. She had not only built a career they ignored, but she had also orchestrated this event entirely herself. Every detail was her doing: the yacht, the catering, the design, the guest list. What they had assumed was beyond her reach was entirely within her command. The realization hit like a wave. They had underestimated her, and that miscalculation had led to this moment of irreversible power shift. Her sister's eyes widened, a flash of disbelief and envy crossing her face. For a fleeting second, the golden child realized the consequences of years of mockery. Her family, once so confident in defining her limits, now had no words, no defenses. The laughter that had once dismissed her was replaced by stunned silence. Layla's victory wasn't loud, it wasn't vengeful, it was precise, elegant, and undeniable. Every choice she made, every effort she invested in herself, had culminated in this moment. The audience could feel it. The tension, the triumph, the poetic justice of a life reclaimed. She had transformed humiliation into awe, invisibility into presence, and doubt into validation. She concluded her speech with a quiet, piercing line. "The lessons I've learned are not about wealth, fame, or recognition. They're about resilience, integrity, and never letting anyone define your worth. Today isn't just a celebration, it's proof that persistence and faith in yourself can rewrite the narrative." The room remained silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into applause. Guests cheered, friends hugged her, and colleagues whispered their admiration. Her family, for the first time in years, was speechless. They had witnessed the undeniable truth. Layla was not the girl they had ignored. She was the woman who had outgrown every limitation they had imposed. In that moment, the climax wasn't about confrontation, it was about revelation. The humiliation they had once inflicted had transformed into respect, the dismissals into awe. The girl who had been invisible had become the center of attention, not through anger or retaliation, but through meticulous strategy, unwavering patience, and unshakable self-belief. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, Layla had achieved more than a celebration. She had claimed her power, rewritten her story, and delivered a quiet, unforgettable lesson. Underestimation is temporary, but preparation, perseverance, and courage create a legacy that cannot be ignored. Dear audience, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to give it a like. It really helps. After the yacht wedding, Layla's life didn't simply continue. It transformed. She didn't just walk away from the past, she redefined her future. The applause and admiration she received that day were only the beginning. The quiet victories, the long nights of sacrifice, the years of relentless perseverance, they had all converged into a life she now owned completely. Layla launched her own architecture firm, a space where creativity, innovation, and integrity ruled. Unlike the environments that once stifled her, this was a place where talent mattered above everything else, where merit determined opportunity, and where she could mentor young professionals the way Marcus had once guided her. The firm quickly earned a reputation for excellence, blending elegant designs with practical functionality. It wasn't just about buildings, it was about leaving a mark on the world, a legacy she had long imagined in her sketches as a teenager. Her personal life flourished, too. Friends who had supported her quietly over the years became integral parts of her journey, celebrating milestones and offering advice, their presence a constant reminder that success is sweeter when shared. Even her family, once dismissive and mocking, began to see her in a new light. Calls came daily, not out of obligation, but genuine respect. Apologies followed, tempered with curiosity about how she had accomplished so much with so little recognition. Layla didn't hold grudges. She simply allowed their admiration to exist while remaining grounded in her own sense of self-worth. The sister who had once tried to hold her back became tentative allies. Slowly, over shared meals and conversations, old wounds began to heal. Not completely, but enough to allow a sense of reconciliation. Layla had realized that redemption wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was also about achieving peace within herself, about transforming past pain into a guiding force rather than a lingering burden. Even her broader community began to notice her impact. Young women in particular found inspiration in her story. Layla started a mentorship program teaching aspiring architects and entrepreneurs how to navigate obstacles, balance ambition with ethics, and pursue their goals relentlessly. She emphasized that success is rarely instant. It is painstakingly earned through small, consistent efforts, resilience in the face of adversity, and the courage to claim one's worth despite external doubts. Looking back, Layla saw the vast difference between then and now. Once she had been invisible, overlooked, and underestimated. Her teenage self had spent nights dreaming in silence, longing for recognition she never received. Now she commanded rooms without a word, inspired peers with her vision, and created spaces where others could finally be seen. She had transformed invisibility into influence, derision into admiration, and struggle into triumph. There were quiet, reflective moments, too. Layla often walked alone on the balcony of her office, overlooking the city skyline she had once only imagined. She thought of the young girl she had been, determined, exhausted, persistent, and smiled. That girl had endured betrayal, financial stress, and humiliation, but she had never stopped believing in the possibility of a life beyond those limits. Layla knew that every sacrifice had been worth it, and that every hardship had shaped her into a leader capable of redefining her destiny. The ultimate lesson, she realized, wasn't about wealth, fame, or status. It was about integrity, perseverance, and self-belief. The world might laugh, doubt, or dismiss you, but the strength to endure, adapt, and rise above challenges creates a legacy no one can ignore. Layla's journey had become a blueprint not just for her, but for anyone who felt overlooked or underestimated. Proof that resilience, courage, and vision can transform even the harshest trials into enduring triumph. Today, Layla Morgan walks with quiet confidence, inspiring those who dare to dream big, demonstrating that respect is earned, visibility is won, and power belongs to those who refuse to let life define them. She's no longer the girl ignored at home, the overlooked student, or the silent worker. She's undeniable, respected, and, above all, at peace with herself. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories every week. They once called Layla just a shadow, a girl who existed quietly behind others' brilliance. But the truth, she had been building, learning, surviving, and strategizing long before anyone paid attention. Every obstacle she faced, every dismissal, every insult, every door closed was a lesson in resilience, patience, and audacity. Layla didn't need applause to validate her journey. She didn't need her family's approval to know her worth. What she sought was mastery over her own life, the ability to define success on her terms, and the courage to pursue it relentlessly. And in the end, she achieved it. Not through luck, but through perseverance, dignity, and unwavering self-belief. So what do we learn from Layla's story? That being underestimated is not a weakness, but a challenge to rise. That humiliation can be a teacher, invisibility a tool, and patience the quiet architect of transformation. That courage isn't always loud. It can be the calm, steady persistence that moves mountains without anyone noticing. Here's the final twist. One of the young architects she mentored, someone she had helped guide quietly through early setbacks, just won a prestigious international award. At the ceremony, the mentor's name was mentioned first, not as a footnote, but as the force behind the talent. Layla's influence had extended beyond her own success. Her legacy was now in the people she empowered, the dreams she helped realize, and the lives she touched without fanfare. And it begs the question, how many invisible people around us are quietly building empires, rewriting narratives, and preparing their own moments of triumph? How often do we underestimate the quiet ones, the overlooked, the dismissed? Perhaps the next time you cross paths with someone deemed insignificant, remember Layla. Their current silence does not define their future impact, because sometimes the person you ignore, the one you think is powerless, is the very one who will change the rules, inspire a generation, or leave a legacy far greater than the applause you thought mattered. Layla's story reminds us that true power doesn't scream, it persists. That recognition follows resilience, and that patience combined with courage creates a life that cannot be denied. Her yacht wedding was not just a celebration, it was proof that perseverance, self-respect, and vision are forces unstoppable by mockery, doubt, or delay. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.